Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
We hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving for all of our
Yes.
listeners in the U.S.
Yes.
And now on to December.
I cannot believe it's already December.
I know this year flew by.
What happened to this year?
Seriously, so fast. And it's all the holidays now.
Yep. Just speeding by.
It's going to be 2026 before we know it.
I know.
Wild.
I feel like I can do all my Christmas shopping.
Yes. Like it's officially allowed.
Yep. Watching for any deals this week.
Yep.
Whatever we can find, because it's not cheap out there, people.
No, it isn't.
We went to a holiday market over the weekend. That was really fun. They had a lot of fun local shops and different things that really
Love that.
fun. Yeah.
Love all the buy local options.
I found out my kids love the crocheted animals.
Oh, they're super cute.
Yeah, I was like, Mom, you got to make more of these. And they sell for a lot of money.
Yeah, they take a lot of time.
Ones, they are so much work because I've tried to make them. I can crochet like a washcloth, like a hot pad or a blanket. Not a big blanket, but, little things.
Yes,
I tried to do like the woobles thing.
Oh, yeah, those are fun.
Yeah, they're not easy, and those are tiny, so I can't even imagine those big animals.
Yeah.
But some of them are like $70. And I was like, Mom, you need to set up shop and make some animals.
I know she makes fun ones.
She does, and they're really cute. She could have a shop at these markets.
Hey, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it was fun though. They had baby pigs that were like 8 weeks old.
Oh,
they were so cute.
My child would have tried to bring that home to our zoo for sure. Like, Mom, you're not allergic to this.
Yeah, they were so cute. I sent a picture to my husband and I said, they gave baby pigs instead of they have baby pigs. And he wrote back and he's like, did you mean have or gave? Because those are very different sentences right there.
That's a hilarious autocorrect.
Yeah, he's like, please do not bring home a baby pig. But they were so funny. Every time you try to pick them, they were running away and all the kids wanted to pet them. And they were just screaming as soon as they would try to pick them up and then they would just sit there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I have a case for you today that takes place right before Christmas. It's a little bit of a holiday, I don't know, crossover.
Yeah. We can do some Christmas ones now. It's Christmas season.
It's a little different than the Halloween ones.
Yeah.
Little different.
Yeah, not quite the same there.
A little bit more tragic. Are you ready to jump in?
Sure. Yep, let's get going.
All right. It was 3 days before Christmas in West Cork, the kind of winter morning where the cold hangs low over the hills, like a breath not yet exhaled. The sea beyond the cliffs was a sullen gray, turning against the rocks with a slow, eternal rhythm. The winding country road that led from Sophie's whitewashed cottage towards the village of Skull was slick with rain and dappled in mist, the hedgerows heavy with dew. Sophie drove into town in her little silver car, her boots crunching softly against the gravel as she stepped out. She pulled her coat tighter around her, the wool brushing her cheeks, her breath visible in the air. In the village, the main street was quiet, just a few locals out with shopping bags. The chiming bell of the small grocery door swinging open and closed. The butcher's window displayed strings of sausages and pine garlands. Sophie ducked into the corner shop, her French accented hello, soft and polite. She bought a few things, maybe milk, wine, a loaf of bread, some fruit, and she smiled that easy, distant smile that strangers remember long after. Outside, the sea air whipped around the street corners, carrying with it the scent of peat smoke and salt. She paused for a moment, hands in her pockets, looking up at the cloud-streaked sky. Then she turned quietly and walked back to her car. The next morning, Just 2 days before Christmas in 1996, a horrific discovery shattered the peace of rural West Cork, Ireland. The battered body of 39-year-old French woman, Sophie Toscan du Plantier, was found lying in the brambles at the edge of her cottage's driveway. Sophie had been brutally beaten to death, her skull crushed by a concrete block that lay nearby.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, horrifying.
It's awful.
The violent crime in this idyllic community set off a decades-long quest for justice that unfortunately remains unsolved 29 years later. It's a story of tragedy, really awful that it's unsolved, and you'll find out more why as we go. But I think if it had gone differently right from the very beginning, it wouldn't be unsolved, unfortunately.
Yeah. A lot of those seem to be that way.
I hate that. Ireland and France are still asking who will answer for Sophie's murder. Sophie was, by all accounts, a talented and multifaceted woman. She was born in Paris in 1957. She worked as a television producer in France. At the time of her death, Sophie was married to noted French film producer Daniel Toscan du Plantier. She was also the mother of one son, Pierre-Louis, from a previous marriage. Despite being part of French high society through her marriage, Sophie was also known as private, but also independent. Her son later described her as artsy and intellectual. He said she was very social, but more than half of her was solitary, writing, thinking, meditating. It sounds like she really cherished those moments of solitude. And one place that Sophie especially loved for solitude was Ireland. She had first visited Ireland as a teenager, and she quickly fell in love with the country's wild beauty. In 1993, she bought a modest white cottage in the town of Turmore. And I apologize. I went through and listened to how to pronounce all of these things multiple times and tried to put them in here like that. But I do apologize if I pronounce one of these names wrong. But I'm trying, I promise.
Yeah.
Turmore.
You always try really hard to
I do.
And get them right. But it's hard when they're foreign names.
I know. So. And I don't know what the word is, but I don't have the way to pronounce the French things like the French do. They're so beautiful when they say it. It's not the same when I say it.
I always feel that way.
I know.
Spanish, when my husband speaks Spanish versus when I try and speak Spanish, it sounds very different.
Yeah. Once they get that dialect or
like the cadence and things like that makes a big,
absolutely.
I don't have that either, so I can't help you out.
Yeah. Maybe one of our listeners can, but I do apologize. In 1993, like I said, she bought the modest white cottage in the town of Turmore, which is near the coastal village of Skull in West Cork, Ireland. She bought it as kind of a holiday retreat. It was a 2-story cottage that sat in an isolated spot. It had a view of the Atlantic and also the Fastnet Lighthouse from her bedroom window. It sounds amazing, right?
Yeah.
Sophie visited this cottage regularly. She often brought along her son, and locals knew her simply by her maiden name, which was Sophie Boniel. An American neighbor in West Cork, Bill Hogan, recalled that Sophie became a familiar, friendly place around school, someone whom you might only meet once, but would never forget. Sophie immersed herself in this peaceful life during these visits. Her neighbor, Hogan, said, quote, she was highly intelligent. Her mind would go from one place to another peak entirely, pointing out how captivating and smart she was. Another local remembered how the area had been a haven for artists and for writers, a sanctuary that Sophie herself treasured. This part of West Cork is really a haven for writers and artists that has been violated by Sophie's murder, Hogan said later on.
I'm sure that used to be a haven for writers and artists.
And just
definitely
small,
see that being just
peaceful.
Changed.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
In December 1996, Sophie decided to make a short trip to her Irish cottage just before Christmas. According to her family, she had some practical matters to attend to at the house. Reportedly, there was a problem with the heating system that needed fixing. Sophie planned to return to Paris in time for the holidays with her family. She arrived in Ireland on Friday, December 20th, 1996. She flew in alone and drove to her remote West Cork home.
Wasn't with her, correct?
No, thankfully.
Okay. Yeah.
It was the off season in this area, wintertime, when many of the holiday homes or like vacation homes you would go to sit empty and the roads were pretty quiet. Sophie's presence in the community that weekend was noted, but not widely. A French woman alone in her country cottage was not unusual. She'd done it many times before. Over the next 2 days, December 21st and December 22nd, Sophie occupied herself with errands and preparations. She was, at heart, a romantic and a thoughtful person. On Sunday, December 22nd, Sophie phoned a gardener back in France and arranged for a special gift for her husband, Daniel. She ordered a linden tree to be planted at their property in France as this surprise present for him.
Oh, that's nice.
That night, she also called and spoke with Daniel by phone sometime after 11 p.m., presumably exchanging pre-Christmas cheer, discussing her return to Paris. This would be the last time her husband ever heard her voice.
God.
I know. That always hits so hard when you hear like the last time they saw them or heard them or spoke with them.
I know, it really makes you think.
It does.
When you have conversations with people, like, what if this is the last time? You never know when that's going to be. And
exactly.
Horrible to think that way, but
right. These
you
cases
always want to make sure
that.
leave things on a good note.
Absolutely.
No, it's awful.
Yeah. According to all accounts, Sophie had every intention of catching a flight home the next day on Christmas Eve. Her bags were actually partly packed for her return trip, but she would never make it home. Now, what exactly happened in the late hours of December 22nd, 1996, remains a chilling mystery. We know that Sophie had changed into her night clothes for bed. She was wearing this long-sleeved night dress. She also had a pair of boots on. Whether to step outside briefly or go check on something, we're not sure. Sometime in the middle of the night, something or someone drew Sophie outside into the cold darkness. Around 10 a.m. on December 23rd, 1996, one of Sophie's neighbors, a local woman named Shirley Foster, was out driving when she spotted what looked like clothes or a mannequin near the entrance to Sophie's property. Drawing closer, Shirley realized with horror that it was the body of her neighbor, Sophie. She was sprawled on the ground at the end of the laneway leading up to her cottage, clad only in that nightwear we discussed and her boots. She also had long john pajama bottoms, which I'm assuming because it was cold anyways, if she was stepping outside, she'd want more. But also, I don't know if her heat had been completely fixed yet. So it might have been kind of cold inside too.
Yeah.
These were...
Well, and if she had a dress on, I could imagine wearing leggings or leggings or something underneath it.
Yeah, especially if you're looking for something outside or going to check on something.
Yeah, for sure.
The bottoms were snagged on a barbed wire fence nearby. So it was immediately clear that something terrible and violent had occurred. Sophie's head and her face were viciously battered to the point that Shirley could not recognize her friend by face.
Oh, dear. I can't imagine finding your friend that way.
I can't either. That would just make you sick and feel so terrible.
Well, and not haunt you for the rest of your life.
I'm sure. Blood stained the grass and the gate. Lying not far from the body were two gruesome potential weapons, a heavy concrete block and a flat slate rock, both also blood-soaked. Shirley ran for help immediately, raising the alarm with another neighbor and contacting the Gardaí, which are the Irish police. The first Gardaí on scene were local officers from the Skull Bantry area. They quickly realized that this was no accident. It was a homicide. Obviously, not an accident. And it was It was a homicide of extreme brutality. Like we said, Sophie had been bludgeoned to death, and later the state pathologist, whose name is Dr. John Harbison, would catalog her injuries. He says, quote, a laceration, swelling of the brain, fracture of the skull, and multiple blunt head injuries. These were all noted in his postmortem report. The evidence indicated that Sophie had likely tried to flee or fight her attacker. Investigators believed that she was attacked outside the house and may have attempted to escape down like her driveway, or it says laneway in the reporting, but was chased and beaten to the ground where her body was found. She had defensive wounds and there were signs of a struggle. One forensic detective later concluded Sophie had come out of her cottage, ready for bed. Something happened suddenly. And, maybe that's the reason that she came out in the first place. And she was either dragged or she ran down the path where the killer caught up with her. In that lonely laneway under the moonlight, Sophie met her violent end.
So sad.
It's so sad. This whole case is sad because without a conclusion, it's really hard to know why this happened or what exactly happened, which I also really hate because you don't know if it's someone she knew or didn't know,
Yeah. Well, it's fine. You kind of think like maybe someone showed up at her door and like, hey, could you come out and check my car with me? Or could you come check this? Or maybe someone pretending to have a delivery or something.
Totally.
When she opens the door and then they attack her. But the why, that's, especially without knowing who it was or anything like that.
Right. News of Sophie's murder spread quickly through West Cork that day, and it sent shockwaves through this tight-knit community. This area of Ireland was known for its tranquility and low crime. The idea that a woman could be brutally killed outside her home was nearly unthinkable. As one local recalled, it was like the sky had fallen in on us. This bolt of terror and grief from out of the blue. Many residents had never known such fear until that moment. Sophie's family back in France learned of the tragedy in an equally traumatic way. That evening, Sophie's mother, Marguerite, was watching the news in Paris when reports of a killing in Ireland appeared. Meanwhile, Sophie's brother, which I know is said differently in French, and I'm so sorry, frantically phoned a neighbor in Ireland for information. The neighbor was sobbing so uncontrollably that her brother could barely understand her words. Finally, he demanded, right? Can you imagine finding out this way? Because you just happen to have the news on and they just happen to cover this story.
It's awful.
Awful. Finally, her brother demanded, tell me, is it Sophie? The anguished reply came, yes, it was Sophie. It was such a shock, he said, of that moment. It was like the sky had fallen. We couldn't imagine such a thing could happen in such a quiet region of Ireland. The Irish authorities launched a murder investigation immediately. They cordoned off the area around Sophie's cottage and the laneway. However, as would soon become apparent, this investigation was plagued by inexperience and early missteps. West Cork in 1996 was not prepared for a major homicide scene, and certainly not one like this.
Yeah.
Critical forensic evidence may have been lost or compromised in those first hours.
Or not even collected.
Yes, compromised, uncollected, and not collected in a way that we could save it for whatever was saved or for whatever was collected.
Yeah, so it wasn't like preserved. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
okay.
To my understanding with some of this.
Okay.
Due to logistical issues like the holiday timing, the pathologist did not arrive to examine the body until 28 hours after discovery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we don't know how long before discovery this happened. So it could be 36 hours because she wasn't found until after 10 a.m. In the interim, waiting for the pathologist, Sophie's body lay outdoors in the winter elements for over a day. By the time a thorough forensic examination was conducted, the scene had been disturbed by weather, animals, the coming and going of officers. In fact, Sophie's family later learned that multiple Gardaí had walked through the crime scene, potentially trampling evidence before
Oh,
specialists
geez.
arrived. And maybe there was footprint evidence that now is
Is gone.
compromised or gone completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it snowing?
It
Or
seems
was it?
like the weather had been off and on, whether it was snow or like a drizzle mist, but still being out in the elements for that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blood evidence was noted on the farm gate and these makeshift weapons that were found nearby. The integrity of those items would later come into question. The blood-stained gate itself, which may have held trace evidence of the killer, mysteriously went missing while in police custody not long after.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, we love when evidence goes missing.
Yeah. That's
Awful.
great.
hmm Years later, police officials claimed the gate had been removed and discarded because it was, quote, not deemed probative,
Okay.
a decision widely criticized in hindsight.
Yeah.
Don't get rid of it until it's solved.
Yeah. Just keep whatever you have.
Exactly. From the outset, there was a sense that the crime scene had been chaotic. Bertrand, Sophie's brother, had traveled to Ireland to identify his sister's body. He said local police seemed overwhelmed. He said, quote, the local police had never had to deal with anything like it, which perhaps explains their incompetence, end
Yeah.
quote. This harsh,
But not an excuse.
no, it,
Still your job. Like you
yeah.
have to, yeah.
His harsh assessment came not immediately, not on the day of, but after years of watching this case flounder and the evidence of mishandling that emerged later. Besides the missing gate, other items went, quote, astray, and procedures like proper photographing and preservation of the scene were arguably insufficient. Later analysis by the police watchdog for the Irish police would conclude that while there was poor management of the investigation, there was, quote, no evidence of high level corruption. So essentially, they ruled that these screw ups were due to error and disorganization, but not an intentional cover up.
Yeah. So they weren't trying to mishandle things to cover something from what they did, was involved with it in
That's
the
what it
police.
sounds like. I'm not sure how you could know that if you don't have proper evidence or
Yeah.
an organized crime scene or any of it, but they did come out and say that. So hopefully that is true.
Yeah.
These early mistakes, though, definitely cast a long shadow over the case, giving rise to many doubts and also conspiracy theories as years went by. Despite these issues, investigators did begin piecing together a picture of Sophie's last night. They theorized Sophie had possibly heard a noise outside or was alarmed by something, prompting her to grab her boots and step into the yard, they believe sometime after midnight. The cottage's front door was found closed. Now, that could have blown shut behind her, or whoever did this to her could have closed it, or she
Yeah.
could have closed it. They believe that the attacker did not come inside and all of it happened outside of her home. Evidence suggests that she tried to run. They found broken briars. The location of her body indicates that she did run towards that driveway or that lane headed outside of her property. Go ahead.
Maybe like she heard someone trying to break in. So she went outside to see it, or if she heard noises outside, if they were trying to
Totally
break into her
possible.
house. Were there any signs of attempted force or anything like that?
Not that I found, but
Okay.
again,
Did they look?
it's hard to know. Like that gate, were they able to just come through it? Did it have some kind of lock on it, or was it
Yeah.
just like a open and closed gate that anybody could get through? I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
I wish I knew.
I know.
The attacker, they think, caught up with her when she was trying to run down that lane. And they believe first that they hit her with a large flat rock. And then, in the frenzy of her fighting back, perhaps the attacker dropped that and picked up a heavy concrete cinder block and smashed it into her skull. Shockingly violent, up close killing, which we don't see very often.
Um,
One
and
crime,
nothing was taken like from her car or anything like that.
I didn't see anything taken from her car.
Okay. Like maybe they were trying to break into her car or something and she caught
Oh, that's
them.
possible. She could have
Maybe
heard
she
that.
heard that.
I have two thoughts. If it was outside and this whole fight was going on, I'm curious if any of the neighbors heard anything at a specific time
Yeah.
or why nobody heard anything.
Yeah.
It's
Because
also
there's probably yelling,
right.
I would
Absolutely.
assume. I would
Screaming,
be
yelling.
screaming.
Yeah, same.
How far away was her cottage from the nearest neighbor, though?
I need to look that up. I don't have a specific address. So I'm not exactly sure if they were acres or if it was
Yeah.
more like a traditional neighborhood where they're really close. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
It seems like if no one heard anything, that it was most likely they were further away, like more spaced out.
And it sounds like with how her neighbors responded after this happened, I feel like if they had heard something, they wouldn't have just waited for police to come interview them. They would have been going to share what they heard and
Yeah.
when, right?
Well, it seemed like they liked her. Like it
Yeah,
wasn't a situation where she's the annoying neighbor or something where they're not
right.
friendly with each other, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that I keep thinking is if someone came to harm her, why are they using a rock and a concrete block that they find outside?
Yeah. Why wouldn't they have brought something
Right. So I don't know
with
if,
them?
yeah. One crime reporter described it as overkill and a rage killing, which is also interesting. The
Yeah.
brutality strongly suggested the killer was acting in passion or anger rather than carrying out this coldly premeditated plot. Like we talked about, not bringing a weapon. With such a ferocious murderer potentially at large, the West Cork community was gripped by fear in the following days. One local neighbor said, I have never felt terror like it.
Yeah.
Checkpoints were set up on rural roads, and the Gardaí conducted door to door inquiries across this sparsely populated area. And it could have been also that her closest neighbors were on holiday or visiting family for the holidays and not around. And
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
the only close neighbors were very far away.
Yeah, that's true. It is right before Christmas. And it
Mhm.
seems like she uses that more as a holiday cottage. Maybe other people in her area do the same,
Going to other
kind of like a
places.
cabin or something,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
like a beach house. You know what people have that they go to
I
stay
get
at
the
for
feeling
vacation.
that it's like a summer place. Like people go there
Yeah,
to summer. And so in the winter, they could be at other places
anywhere.
if that's like
Yeah,
a second home and they don't normally go there in the winter.
right.
They were asking who could have done this and why. Sophie, technically, and this is what is said in the reporting over and over, was a outsider because she was a part-time resident. It didn't mean that they didn't appreciate having her there and like her, but they're just thinking, who knew that she was going to be here? Because she doesn't always come at this time. She doesn't come on a specific
Yeah,
set schedule. And, she only came to fix the heating and it was a super short trip. So
yeah.
that's another question in this case.
Well, it kind of makes me think too about like Home Alone,
Yeah.
where they are planning out who's not going to be in those houses during the holidays.
Yes.
Maybe someone was trying to break in like to these houses where they know people don't live very often.
Yeah.
And it caught them off guard. That they might
That
not have
makes
brought a
sense.
weapon if that was
Because,
the case.
right, they
They're
didn't
not
think they
expecting
would
anybody to
see
be there.
anyone. Yeah, exactly.
So if they had known which houses were regularly occupied and hers wasn't one of those,
Right.
it might have been something like that.
That makes sense. I think that makes the most sense so far. They found no immediate signs of sexual assault or robbery. Her cottage appeared and nothing obvious was stolen. You do kind of have to wonder if they knew what she had there or what she had brought with her, or if it was a robbery and they got scared off by her. That happened and then they left because they didn't want, maybe they didn't know who could hear the fight.
Yeah. And if she's screaming, they attack her and then leave because they don't want to get caught either.
Right.
I don't know why you brutally murder someone if you're there to rob,
right.
To try and go into houses where people don't normally live. It doesn't seem like there would be very much there worth stealing.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Right.
Bizarre.
Okay, because if you're thinking she isn't there right then, you're not expecting to find a wallet or jewelry. She's not leaving that stuff there.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
They were going to squat at her house. Who knows?
Oh, maybe. They're like, we'll just stay here for a few days.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Seems very, sorry.
No, you're good.
Seems very brutal and I don't know. Like you said, overkill.
Rage. Right.
It is just something like that.
Agreed.
If you're trying to break into someone's house and they're there and they catch you, wouldn't you usually run away?
I would think so. Why would you, especially if it's night and dark? Right.
Yeah. So many questions.
So many.
Hey, we don't
none of it makes sense. Exactly. Like you can say, okay, this makes sense, but the more you work through it, it doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
To investigators, it appeared to be a one-on-one attack. So they're not thinking multiple people were attacking Sophie. They thought possibly by someone she knew or who surprised her in the night.
What other option is there?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Either someone she knew or someone she didn't know who wasn't supposed to be there. I don't know what other option there is.
Those are the options.
Exactly. The community and soon the media began to speculate that the killer was someone local. Indeed, one early theory investigators considered was that Sophie might have had a late night visitor or encountered someone she knew and let her guard down, and things turned violent. The initial phase of the investigation, though, no obvious suspect emerged from Sophie's personal life. Her family and friends were in France at the time. They all had rock-solid alibis. Sophie did not have any known enemies. By all accounts, she was this gentle, cultured person. She adored poetry and nature and meditating, quiet reflection, not someone entangled in risky endeavors. But within days, attention quickly focused on one man, an eccentric English journalist named Ian Bailey, who lived a few miles away. Bailey was something of a, quote, blow-in, as the Irish say, a newcomer to West Cork who had moved from England in the early 1990s. He was 6'2", with a distinctive, as they say, craggy appearance, and they found him often wearing a black fedora. Ian Bailey was a familiar figure in the Skull area. He worked as a freelance journalist, and he also did odd jobs like gardening and market trading. He was even known to sell pizzas and his own poems at the local market.
Oh, okay.
Pizza and poetry.
Sounds good to me.
He lived with his partner, a Welsh-born artist named Catherine, at her cottage near the village of Goleen, not far from Sophie's home. Bailey actually inserted himself into the story from day one. Initially, not a suspect, but as a reporter. On the morning Sophie's body was found, Bailey claims that he was tipped off by a call from a newspaper colleague around 1:40 p.m. on December 23rd, informing him of a murder of a woman in Skull. Bailey wasted no time. He began phoning in details. He visited the scene. He was working on writing articles for the Irish press, becoming the first journalist, actually, to report on Sophie's murder. This struck some as odd. It was as if Bailey were very quick to exploit the tragedy for a story. But what truly raised eyebrows were Bailey's own actions and injuries in the days immediately after the murder. Locals noticed scratches on Ian's hands, forearms, and a fresh cut on his forehead around Christmas. When asked about these injuries, Bailey gave an explanation. He said that on the morning of December 22nd, the day before the murder, he had gone out to cut down a Christmas tree for the holidays, and he must have scratched himself on branches. However, investigators later tried reenacting tree cutting in the same way and found it hard to reproduce similar scratches.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. In addition, friends who saw Bailey on the evening of the 22nd, after his supposed tree cutting excursion, but before the murder, did not recall seeing any scratches or wounds on him at the time. So the implication was that the injuries might have appeared overnight, potentially after the murder occurred in the early hours of the 23rd.
That's very interesting.
It gets more so.
Okay.
The stories that Bailey allegedly told others were even more alarming. Several witnesses would later report that Bailey spoke of the murder before he could have reasonably known certain details. So, for example, Marie, who was a shopkeeper in Skull, anonymously called police on January 11th, 1997, claiming she saw a man standing on a bridge near Sophie's home at 3 a.m., the night of the murder. She used the alias Fiona at the time, but eventually she came forward and she also identified that man as Ian Bailey. Separately, a 14-year-old local boy, Malachi Reed, told police that in early February 1997, Bailey had given him a ride in his car. And this is odd.
Weird.
On top of that part being odd, during the drive, he says Bailey casually said, "I killed her. I did it. I did her in."
Oh.
Malachi recalled Bailey saying he did it to experience what it would be like to kill a woman, then adding that, "Just kidding, I'm only joking."
Why?
Not funny.
Why would you do that?
I do not know.
And why would you say that, like, to a 14-year-old boy that you're giving a ride in your car?
It's like, do you think he won't report it, but an adult would? And you just have to say the words out loud and see how they land? I don't know.
Weird.
Yeah.
What is it with these killers using kids?
Right? You're thinking of Greenbrier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go check on my wife, little kid.
Right. In another incident, Bailey's own editor at the Sunday Tribune reported that a few weeks after the murder, Ian had drunkenly remarked something along the lines of, quote, "I went up there and bashed her brains in with a rock. I did it to resurrect my career as a journalist." And again, later claimed that statement was just a dark joke.
Separate occasion, he's claimed that he's done this, but it's okay.
Right. Bailey would later admit that he made bizarre comments like these, but insisted he never meant them. It was just his, quote, dry sense of humor gone wrong.
That is not sense of humor. That is not any type of sense of humor.
No, it's just bizarre.
Claiming you killed somebody.
Right. Unsurprisingly, those who heard his remarks were deeply disturbed. A fellow reporter recalled interviewing Bailey in early 1997 and coming away convinced that he was guilty and shocked that Bailey would even half-jokingly implicate himself. Physical cues also pointed towards Bailey. Remember the scuffle on the laneway. Investigators believed the killer might have scratches or torn clothing from those brambles that Sophie ran through, and Bailey's scratches on his arms fit that scenario. Sophie had also apparently torn out some hair from her attacker. She was found with hair clutched in her hand.
Didn't test any of that?
Well, this detail comes from a witness recollection and not a confirmed forensic report.
Okay.
So take that for what you will. I like to just go off of the forensics, but in this case, it was sitting out for 28 plus hours. So I don't know.
Okay.
If that's true, investigators and people in the community wondered if Bailey had hair missing or other signs of a struggle. And there were reports later mentioned in court that a witness saw Bailey with scratches on his face and possibly a bald patch, but they were never officially documented at the time.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
They didn't find like any, or they didn't look for any cells like under her fingernails or anything like that?
I believe that they did. I'm not sure if those have been tested recently when we have more to go off of or if they were saved.
Okay.
I would assume if they found hair, hopefully they would have saved that and tested it.
Yeah.
But again, it's not in the forensic report.
Yeah.
Another crucial inconsistency involves the timing of when Bailey learned about the murder. So Bailey claims he only heard about Sophie's death in the early afternoon of December 23rd when a different reporter called him. He and his partner, Jewel Thomas, both told police they were unaware of anything until after 1:30 that day. But multiple witnesses contradicted this. Several neighbors later swore that Bailey was spreading news of a murdered Frenchwoman hours earlier, by late morning on the 23rd. So really, really close to when she was even found.
Yeah.
And again, she does live close. And I would hope if that happened in my neighborhood or a mile away, that I would somehow be aware.
Yeah.
But also, we have apps now for that.
Yeah. And it's the middle of winter. Like it's winter time too. It's not like people are frequently out going for a run or things. I mean, they might be, but depending on the weather.
And you could be out running last minute errands before Christmas.
Yeah.
So we'll try to play devil's advocate as much as possible. But
yeah, maybe someone was out for a walk and saw what was going on and said it to somebody else. But
right. I feel like in small communities, small towns, word does travel really fast.
Yeah. But how many times, like even now, do you see like police lights at the neighbor's house and it's like, what's going on? And no one can ever figure it out.
Yeah, like the other day.
For a while. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Or Krista sometimes has sent videos of what do you think's going on down the street? But we don't know what's going on.
Right.
There's like fire trucks and police cars and
yeah, she had the whole area blocked off.
We never found out what happened, you know?
So I can see both sides, I guess, on that one.
Yeah.
One acquaintance, a man named James, stated that around 11 to 11:30 a.m. on December 23rd, he ran into Jules, who is Bailey's partner. She told him that Ian was, quote, reporting on a murder, an odd thing to say if neither of them officially knew about it until after 1 p.m. James's statement directly contradicted Bailey and Jules' account of learning the news later on in the day. And his testimony became part of the record, though he passed away in 2015 without the case being solved. By early January 1997, the Gardaí had honed in on Ian as their primary suspect. Here was a man who lived locally. He had no solid alibi for the night in question. He had unexplained injuries. He had made self-incriminating remarks and continued to do so after early January.
Yeah.
And a witness placed him near the scene at 3 a.m. It is important to note, however, that at this stage, all the evidence was circumstantial. There was no forensic evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, no blood tying Bailey directly to Sophie's murder. As one Irish official later observed, given how frenzied the attack was, one might expect the assailant to have left some trace blood, skin, fibers, but none was
Yeah.
found to link to Bailey. Even so, on February 10th, 1997, Ian Bailey was arrested at his home and brought in for questioning on suspicion of murder. He was interrogated for over 20 hours.
Oh,
Bailey
wow.
denied any involvement and repeatedly claimed he was completely innocent. With no confession and insufficient evidence to charge him with anything, he was released without charge, but he did spend 2 days in custody. The Irish media had begun to report on developments, though they did not name Bailey initially. Irish law is cautious about identifying suspects who haven't been charged, which I think is fair. But West Cork is a small community. People knew who'd been taken in for questioning. Bailey's distinctive persona, he was considered loud, boisterous, an Englishman in this small Irish village, made him subject to intense gossip. Many
Oh, I'm
locals,
sure.
yeah,
Well, it doesn't help that he's out there incriminating himself to
multiple, at least
multiple
twice that
people.
are recorded. Exactly. Many locals were convinced that he was guilty right away. There were others who were skeptical. They felt like the police had fixated on the outsider in their midst and perhaps weren't even looking at other possibilities. The divide in opinion persisted for decades. As one observer noted, in Ireland, people eventually split into two camps regarding Ian Bailey. Many are convinced he was guilty, others consider him grievously wronged. The truth, as of today, unfortunately, remains officially unproven. In the months following Sophie's murder, tensions mounted. The Gardaí continued their investigation, trying to shore up this case against Bailey. They arrested him a second time a year later in January 1998, hoping that new evidence or inconsistencies might force a breakthrough in their questioning and what he would tell them.
Yeah.
Again, Bailey was interrogated, and again, he walked free without charges after refusing to confess, and they still had no forensic proof against him. It was immensely frustrating for detectives who felt in their gut that they had the right man but couldn't prove it.
Yeah.
According to later reports, the Director of Public Prosecutions, which is known as the DPP in Ireland, examined the investigation files, and they did conclude that there was not enough reliable evidence to warrant a murder charge. Key witness accounts were problematic. For instance, the testimony of Marie, who saw the man on the bridge at 3 a.m., was muddied by the fact that she insisted on remaining anonymous for months. And the reason was because she was having an extramarital affair at the time,
Oh,
which is why she says she was out driving so late. Because of that fact, her credibility was questionable.
mm,
Don't know why that would make your credibility questionable, but at the
yeah.
time it did. And she herself felt that the police pressured her into identifying Bailey. So she's
Mm,
saying she saw the man, she can give the details, maybe not necessarily saying it was exactly him, but felt later on that she had to say it was him.
oh, interesting.
hmm So, despite two arrests, no charges were brought against Ian in 97 or 98, and Sophie's killer remained officially at large. As the initial investigation stalled, criticism of the handling of the case grew. And some of this criticism came from Bailey's side as he began loudly proclaiming that he was the victim of a frame up, or at the very least, the Gardaí's incompetence. Other criticism came from Sophie's family and the French authorities. They were
Hmm.
dismayed at the lack of progress. And I
Yeah.
can't even imagine how awful that would be.
Yeah, totally.
They realized, and it became clear to a lot of people, that the investigation had not been perfect or even close to it. And like I said, we mentioned some of the apparent missteps, like how long the pathology took, the contaminated crime scene, the missing evidence, the witness handling issues. all of those things. Let's go through a couple of them in more detail. So, one of the allegations was witness intimidation. So, Ian and others alleged that the Gardaí coerced or coached witnesses to build a case against him. And the prime example of this is Marie. She originally claimed that she saw a man on the bridge, and her story then shifted over time. In 1997, she anonymously gave information to help point suspicion at Bailey. In 2003, though, she testified under oath that she did see Bailey on the bridge the night of the murder. However, by
Okay.
2005, Marie dramatically retracted that claim. She swore that the police had pressured her into falsely identifying Bailey and that her earlier statements were lies. She even said a senior officer said to her, this is chilling, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Oh, okay.
Don't want to hear that.
No.
Which I feel like just prevents witnesses from coming forward in future cases because it feels like if you come forward and you don't give them what they want to hear, they're going to make you change it. And if you hadn't have come forward at all, you wouldn't be involved at all.
Yeah.
So I
It's not
really
not
don't
good.
like that. No. Bailey's solicitor presented Marie's recantation as proof that the police had tried to, quote, fit up Bailey or make her version of events fit their narrative. The inquiry years later found no evidence of outright fabrication or evidence by police. They did note poor documentation and missing log pages in the case file, which was not
Okay.
great and
No.
fueled suspicion of impropriety. Also, Murray's flip flopping severely hurt the prosecution's potential case. By the time she changed her story, any chance to use her as a credible witness was gone. Neither
Oh,
side
yeah.
could use what she had seen, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Which is
Another,
unfortunate if
it
she
is,
did have more details. And even if they didn't really count her as a credible witness from the beginning,
mhm,
because they were probably saying she's a liar if
right,
she's cheating on her husband,
mhm,
that doesn't help to
right,
be then flip
anonymous, and
flopping.
then saying it
Yeah.
was him, and then it wasn't him. Exactly.
Yeah. And even if she did see something from the beginning, if she had only just shared that and the details of what she did see,
Mhm.
that probably could have helped so much more.
Absolutely. The next problem with the case was the lost and mishandled evidence. So we talked about the missing bloodstained gate, which really became symbolic of the case's problems. In addition, other physical evidence seemed to yield little. For example, Sophie's clothing and the box were tested for DNA in the late 90s, but we know that DNA technology wasn't the same as it is today. And the 1990s technology found nothing conclusive. Some evidence they found may have not been stored properly. Only years later would these new DNA methods be considered. But if it's not stored properly, we can't use the new DNA methods.
Yeah, you can't test it.
We'll come back to that in a bit. Locals also pointed out that in this rural area, the crime scene should have been combed for footprints, tire tracks, unfamiliar
Yeah.
objects, any sign of an outsider. But if any of those clues existed, they were not preserved or deemed inconclusive, I guess, because it hasn't come back around. Another criticism is the zeroing in right away on Bailey and really excluding other leads or following other leads. They, like we said in a quote earlier, felt it in their gut, which if you're doing that and you're so certain that you have the right guy, are you spending time on anything else or only
Yeah.
going down this one direction with suspects?
Right.
Really the only one. It seems like he was the only one. Really, they did technically arrest him to bring him in for interrogation, which I don't think is the same as here. But,
Hmm.
they did talk to family and friends and they did find out the alibis,
Yeah.
but it doesn't seem like they went down many paths. And maybe they just had absolutely no path to go down, but to try
Yeah.
to find people that had no connection to Sophie. It seemed like early on, and most certainly by 1998, the investigation was entirely Bailey centric. One former officer noted that superiors had essentially said, find the killer or find a new job, and we can't have a killer on the loose in West Cork, meaning
Okay.
they were under enormous pressure by local detectives to
Yeah.
case closed. Which,
Right.
I mean, yeah, of course you want case closed, but at the expense of putting an innocent person in prison or ruining your
Threatening,
investigation. Exactly.
threatening your people who are trying to do their job so that
Right.
they may make mistakes or miss
Right.
other things as they are looking into one certain thing.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
good. That's toxic.
Yeah. People wondered if anyone else had even been seriously investigated. Sophie had been a visitor. So could it have been a stranger, a burglar, a jealous lover, a hitman? Bailey himself, once he knew he was under suspicion, began floating alternative theories in the media. In his newspaper articles, seems like a conflict of interest. He
Yeah.
insinuated that Sophie might have had, quote, multiple male companions and hinted at a, quote, French connection, suggesting perhaps someone from France, someone like a spurned lover or an assassin, which seem very different, had
Yes.
followed her to Ireland and killed her. He basically tried to steer suspicion away from West Cork entirely. These theories were widely viewed as far fetched and self serving. And the police said they did explore other angles. For instance, they said they briefly considered and ruled out a known French serial killer who was active in the 1990s. And they looked at anyone in the area with a violent past, but no evidence ever pointed strongly to a second viable suspect, according to their investigation files. One interesting note, Sophie may have actually known Ian Bailey, at least in passing or, being in the same community. Bailey always insisted that he had never met Sophie. However, a French filmmaker friend of Sophie's, a guy named Guy, later told Gardai that just days before the murder, Sophie mentioned that she had a, quote, friend in Ireland called Ian or Eon Bailey, who was exploring, so called Ian Bailey, but he said his name
Okay.
either Eon or Ian, who was exploring themes of violence in his writing. If true, Sophie was at least aware of who Bailey was. Perhaps she had
Yeah.
met him at a local gathering on an earlier trip. This detail wasn't revealed until 1999, which undercut Bailey's claims of total strangerhood.
I was going to say that seems a little contradictory to what he was saying before. Like, how, I mean, if there had been a murder in your neighborhood and it was someone that you knew, it's more likely that you're going to find out and be sharing that information with other people
Oh,
like he was
exactly.
doing. But if it's someone you've never heard of, you didn't meet her, you
Mhm.
didn't know her at all, but somehow you're hearing about this before it's been reported
Right.
and you're sharing the information with other people,
Mhm.
those don't make sense to me.
No,
That doesn't work.
I agree. The other one makes more sense to his
Yeah.
narrative, right?
Right? Yes, it makes more sense that he would have known who she was,
Yes,
had heard about
absolutely.
what had happened from somebody else.
Like you would be more invested if it was someone you knew and not just someone locally that lived a couple miles away.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if someone in my area had passed away, I might have heard that
Mm,
had happened, but I'm not going to be going off telling everybody
right.
if it's not someone that I know.
The timing is interesting
Yeah.
for his story versus the other one.
You
And
would think you
maybe,
would try and be letting people know who they.
mhm,
Did you hear about Sophie? Oh, what happened? It's not going to be, it seems like it wouldn't be just this random person.
agreed. Yeah. I guess the one part of that is by him saying he didn't know who she was, if he did, and also trying to revitalize his journaling, whatever, writer career. Maybe
Hmm.
he's saying he didn't know her to say that he got the scoop in an actual investigative way, journalistic, whatever, compared to, oh, I knew her. So someone called and told me.
Yeah.
That's like 4 layers. Oh,
No. And he was saying that he found out because someone called in that reporting way. Like you were
hmm,
saying, he said someone that he worked with called him to give him the scoop or whatever
right.
later in the day. But if he was sharing the information before that phone call, that seems a little
Right.
bit suspicious.
So are you doing it to distance yourself further?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like either he knew her or knew of her at least.
Had to have known of
Had
her.
to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's
Well, yeah, I feel like I could go down that rabbit hole for a while because it's like, okay, but if you did this, then why didn't you do this? But this
yeah.
makes more sense. Right.
Why are you pretending that you did it if you didn't even know her? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Why would you
Making those
say that?
comments. Yeah. Why would you do that?
Those are weird to me. I do know there are a lot of cases of false confessions, which we definitely need to cover because they're still really hard for me to understand. And maybe this is something similar,
Yeah.
just
Maybe.
to I, put yourself out. I don't know.
Maybe to try and, I don't know, put yourself in that mindset if you are reporting on it.
And you want to report on it in a different, like, personal way, I guess.
Maybe. Because I know people like writers will do that. They'll go and immerse themselves in the things that they're writing about to have a better understanding to write it better. But
Yeah.
I guess it could be something, some kind of mindset that way to
Mm,
want to be in that state of mind to be able to report on it better.
yeah, that's
No.
possible too. Well, in any case, by the end of the 1990s, the Irish investigation basically hit a wall. The director of public prosecutions, the DPP, decided not to charge Ian Bailey, citing insufficient evidence to have a realistic prospect of conviction, which makes sense. If you feel like you cannot convict, you don't want to go to trial and risk a not guilty and then later get the evidence you need to go to trial because you can't go again, right?
Yeah.
In 1999, the case basically went cold. No one else was charged either. Officially, Sophie's murder was unsolved and a cold case. Unofficially, among the West Cork, Gardaí, and many of the locals, it was accepted as truth that Ian Bailey was the killer who got away due to lack of evidence. Bailey, for his part, felt that he was being persecuted for a crime he didn't commit. He became a persistent thorn in the side of the police and the media, proclaiming his innocence loudly and often,
Except for when he didn't.
except for when he's claiming he did it.
Yes.
Just until he was brought in twice and then decided maybe not to say
Oh,
that anymore.
maybe
Right?
I won't joke about doing it
Yeah,
anymore.
crazy.
Bizarre.
While the Irish investigation struggled, Sophie's family in France was living a nightmare of grief and frustration. Sophie's parents, Georgie's and Marguerite, and Sophie's only son, Pierre, were devastated by the loss. They traveled to
Yeah.
Ireland to bring Sophie's body home to France for burial, an unimaginably painful journey. In later interviews, her parents described themselves as being in a state of shock and disbelief that such violence could touch their family. They found solace only in preserving Sophie's memory and fighting for justice. Marguerite, Sophie's mother, even co-wrote a book titled, quote, A Denial of Justice, about the case, detailing her 16-year battle to keep her daughter's story alive. She
Wow.
said, for 16 years, I have broken Sophie's rule of privacy. I said and cried her name so that no one would forget her, but always the silence descends again. Just describing how
Sad.
she had to betray Sophie's aversion to publicity in order to get attention on her unsolved murder. She also said, I have been haunted by the thought of the last thing Sophie saw, which broke my heart.
That's really sad.
From early on, Sophie's family had suspicions about who killed Sophie, and their suspicions aligned with the Gardaí's own suspicions. They also believed that Ian Bailey was the culprit. Growing impatience with the slow progress in Ireland, Sophie's family took unprecedented action. In 1997, just a year after the murder, they began pressuring French authorities to get involved. By late 1999, French investigators opened their own inquiry. Then, in 2000, Sophie's family and her son filed a civil lawsuit for wrongful death against Ian Bailey in France. And this was more symbolic than immediately practical. It was a way to formally accuse Bailey and also to keep the case active.
Yeah.
The family also established an association in France in 2007, and the English translation is the Association for the Truth on the Sophie Toscan du Plantier case, to lobby for justice. Sophie's uncle, Jean Pierre, became a spokesperson for the family's quest. The family made it clear that they would not forget Sophie or let the case be closed quietly. He later said, it's been 27 years the family has campaigned. We want to know what happened. We want to know the details of what happened in those last seconds of Sophie's life. And that seems a legitimate thing for the family, for friends, and for justice. So for them,
absolutely.
yeah, it wasn't about vengeance. It was about truth and closure.
Yeah.
By the early 2000s, the case was straining diplomatic and legal relations between France and Ireland. France has a legal principle that allows it to prosecute the murder of a French citizen abroad, even if the crime occurred in another country. In 2008, French magistrates took a significant step. They ordered Sophie's body exhumed from her grave in France for a second autopsy and forensic analysis by French experts. So that speaks volumes. It shows French authorities were effectively saying, if Ireland can't solve this, we will. French investigators also traveled to West Cork in 2008 to 2009. They visited the crime scene. They met with Irish police. Irish detectives were interviewed in Paris about the case, sharing what they knew. There was cooperation, but also you get the feeling that there was this undercurrent of French distrust in the Irish outcome on the case.
Yeah.
Finally, in February 2010, a French judge named Patrick Gauchon, I'm so sorry if that's not correct, issued a European arrest warrant, which is an EAW, for Ian Bailey, formally seeking to extradite him to France to face charges for Sophie's murder.
Oh, wow.
For her family, it felt like at last there might be a path to a courtroom, if not in Ireland, then in France.
Yeah.
So Irish police did arrest Bailey on foot of the warrant in April 2010, and a high court in Ireland considered the extradition request. Initially, in 2011, the Irish High Court ruled that Bailey should be surrendered to France under the EAW, but Bailey quickly appealed, and in March 2012, Ireland's Supreme Court squashed the extradition. The Supreme Court cited technical and legal reasons. At that time, the French authorities had not yet indicted Bailey. They wanted him extradited for investigation and trial, which the Irish court found problematic. So they want him there, but they're not yet officially charging him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're still in that investigative phase. Additionally, 4 of the 5 justices noted that the alleged crime happened outside France and Ireland had no reciprocal provision to try an Irish person for crimes abroad. So their rules differ on a very fundamental level. And Bailey would violate the principle of it's like a reciprocity. Does that make sense? Where like we'll
Yeah.
extradite if you'll extradite. But while France has it, Ireland doesn't. So they
Right.
said the whole framework was not good. And on that appeal, Bailey won. He would not be sent to France in 2012. And France's case was forced to proceed without him physically present. Even though Ian remained in Ireland, French prosecutors moved forward after years of gathering testimony, including brand new, fresh interviews with many West Cork locals. France was ready to put Ian Bailey on trial in absentia, which means without him present.
Right.
I was just remembering we were watching a show called Absentia and they called it Abstentia. So I'm not entirely sure if they're putting him on trial in absentia, which I had not heard before.
I know I've always heard of absentia.
Me too. But they said previously on abstentia. I was like, wait, that's a word I say in cases.
Yeah.
So I need to dig into that. But he went on trial without being present.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the murder of Sophie. In May 2019, so 22 and a half years after Sophie's death, the French criminal court in Paris convened a trial. Bailey was expected but did not attend. He maintained that the French court had no legitimate jurisdiction over him, and he feared if he set foot in France, he'd never be free again.
Yeah, I would think
which
that
is
too.
probably true.
Yeah.
Over several days, the French judges heard evidence that mirrored much of what we've discussed. They went through the circumstances of the crime, Bailey's alleged admissions, suspicious behavior, witness testimonies. Some were brought in via video or prior statements that they had, files of that they read. Notably, though, some new witnesses or previously muted voices got an airing at this trial. For example, a woman named Amanda testified that her teenage son had heard Bailey confess back in 1997. And that was the one that we went through, the one where they
The
were driving in the
14-year-old.
car. Yep. And a couple friends of Bailey's, Richie and Rosie, recounted a drunken night out in 1998. So separately from when he was with his boss, where Bailey blurted out, I did it. I did it. I went too far, referring to the killing.
So 3 times he told separate people that he had done this.
That we know of. Right. Interesting. And 2 times while drinking, which lowers your guard. I mean, people confess to things they would never normally say.
Right.
So the confessions had been documented in Irish police files. They had come up in a 2003 libel trial, but hearing them in a courtroom likely had more of an impact. Bailey, of course, disputed ever, quote, seriously admitting guilt to anyone, dismissing those statements as either drunken ramblings or misheard jokes. On May 31st, I know, crazy. So crazy.
We just had a talk about this with one of our kids about even if you say a joke, like it's still not okay.
Mm-hmm.
You should not be saying things like that. And my husband said, if you're in the airport and you say, hey, I have a bomb in my carry-on,
they're not taking
they are going to arrest you. Like, even if you're like, just kidding, they're going to take you and search you and not let you on your joke about things like that. And I could see once out with your friends, but 3 times?
Right.
It's so, I don't know.
It seems odd. Like you could say when he's driving with the boy, maybe he is feeling awkward and doesn't know what to say. And
But that's what you
somehow,
say?
I know, I don't know. I'm trying to think of
I
any,
know.
I don't know. It's
I don't
very
know.
odd.
And I could see like with his friends out and they're drinking and he's being accused of this already.
And
And
so
like,
he's like,
okay,
oh,
fine, I
I
did
did
it.
it. Right. Yeah.
Why so many times?
Right.
Were these times after he's already being looked into?
Yes.
I could
And
see with like his boss and his friends, but the kid is so weird.
it is.
I don't know.
And that one seemed more descriptive and detailed than,
Yeah.
but that is a
And
good point, what you said. If he's already being accused, they're saying, oh, did you do it? Like jokingly to him. He
oh,
says it
sure.
jokingly. Right. And maybe he was talking to a different friend and those two are sitting over here. And all they hear is that, okay, I did it. I did it. And they didn't
Yeah.
hear,
That's
I don't know.
where you really do need that context of what else is being said, what else is going on,
Hmm.
what else are they talking about?
Right. How did it come up out of the blue or in response
Yeah.
to, oh, you were interviewed again?
Oh, did
They're
you
really
do it?
looking
Oh,
into
sure, I
you.
did. Like,
Right.
there's so many different ways, I guess, that you could say things like that. But still, the time with the boy and how
Yes.
descriptive he was with that to a
Hmm.
kid.
It's odd.
No, that is odd.
Hmm.
Yes. And the others, I think you could talk away, I guess,
Yeah.
thinking about it, what we were just talking about. But still, three times you can't go around telling people that you did it and then, oh, I was just kidding.
Right.
That's not,
Well, the French judges agree with you. On May 31st, 2019, Ian Bailey was found guilty of the murder of Sophie Toscan du Plantier. He was convicted of voluntary homicide and sentenced to 25 years in prison.
oh, wow.
This conviction was in absentia
Yeah. Say them
and
both. And then,
exactly.
yeah.
And under French law, Bailey would be entitled to a full retrial if he were ever extradited or surrendered to France in the future. So, symbolically and legally, the French had done what the Irish did not. They named Sophie's killer and pronounced punishment. Sophie's family, who did attend the trial in Paris, finally heard a court confirm what they believed, that Ian Bailey was responsible. Bailey's reaction was one of defiance. From Ireland, he gave statements to the media dismissing the Paris judgment. All they've done is convict an innocent man who had nothing to do with the crime, he told The Guardian, calling the French trial a farce and the outcome a pariah for the authorities. His longtime Irish solicitor, a man named Frank, really lambasted the process as well. He called the verdict a grotesque miscarriage of justice, not a trial in the sense that anyone understands it. Bailey maintained, as he had for over 2 decades now, that he was 100% innocent and he was the victim of a witch hunt. After the French verdict, a new European arrest warrant was issued by France in 2019 to try once more to get Bailey in custody. By this time, Bailey was in his early 60s. He was something of a notorious figure in Ireland, a regular subject of true crime coverage, but also someone whom authorities in Ireland had repeatedly declined to prosecute. In October 2020, the Irish High Court ruled for a second time that they would not extradite Bailey to France. The Irish state decided not to appeal this decision. So effectively, all attempts to hand him over to France were done. Whatever France had found, Ireland would not send Bailey abroad. And they did not intend to charge him in Ireland without new evidence.
Interesting.
Or, right. The legal part of this and the back and forth between France and Ireland is a really interesting part of this case to me.
Yeah, for sure. It's not
For
really one like we've covered before. So it's
mm-mm.
the only other one that we had I guess, when the people were abroad was the kids. Do you remember? The daughter who killed the parents with her
Oh,
boyfriend.
yes, that was.
I think Haysam, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they did send them back.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. Right.
But they had more evidence and things like that.
There was that part of it where her boyfriend wasn't extradited quite as quick because he wasn't a US citizen and the murder was committed in America. So they were like, here's your American criminal back.
We don't want her.
No.
Well, wasn't he? I thought he was like in jail for something else there that he had done there, right? Because they'd been.
Yeah, they were forging checks.
Yeah. That's the only extraditing case I was thinking of.
Because I believe he was German.
Oh, yeah.
For Sophie's family, the 2019 verdict was bittersweet. On the one hand, they finally heard a judge declare that Bailey was guilty. But on the other hand, Bailey was still a free man in Ireland. The family still had no finality. Sophie's son said at the time that while the family welcomed the conviction, their ultimate goal was justice in Ireland so that Sophie's murder would be fully resolved in the country where it happened.
Yeah.
Through all of these years, Bailey continued to live in West Cork, albeit under a cloud of suspicion.
Yeah.
The media frequently portrayed him as, quote, the chief suspect in an unsolved murder. Bailey leaned into the attention in some ways. He gave countless interviews, penned open letters maintaining his innocence, and even tried to study law at one point, whether to better defend himself in the court of public opinion or I'm not sure. He and Jules remained together for a remarkably long time, given the strain. Jules stood by him steadfastly for nearly 25 years after the murder.
Oh, wow.
They separated in 2021. Jules told a reporter, quote, after 25 years, I am sick and tired of banging on with this. It's just been awful. All that stuff in print, the press attention, basically the toll of being attached to the most infamous man in West Cork had become too much.
Did she ever say like that he was home that night?
I can't find that. I believe she did, but I don't know if they don't take that into account or if she just said they both were sleeping. So it's an alibi, but not an airtight alibi.
Yeah. If they had gone to bed and then he snuck out.
Right. You have no way of really knowing.
Right.
Bailey did face legal battles beyond the murder. He had tried to clear his name and pushed back against the media by suing the media. In 2003, he sued 8 newspapers for libel over articles suggesting that he was Sophie's killer. The result was mixed. 6 newspapers successfully defended their reporting as reasonable and true. So Bailey lost those cases. But 2 tabloids settled by paying him modest damages. During that libel trial, a judge named Patrick Moran described Bailey as an attention seeker who courted notoriety. Hardly a vindication for Bailey. If anything, the libel proceedings brought out more damning testimony, like Marie's identification of him on the bridge, because at the time she had not yet recanted that. That wasn't for 2 more years. Later in 2015, Bailey sued the Irish state and the Gardaí for wrongful arrest and conspiracy. He was essentially claiming the police had framed him and ruined his life. A jury rejected his claims and he lost that case as well.
But they let him stay there rather than throwing him back to France to go to prison.
Yeah.
They should be a little grateful for.
Yep. But that was
Ireland.
the Supreme Court and not the police. So I guess he'll take that.
Yeah.
Through it all, his core stance hasn't changed. What he says in interviews or in his writing, he has always maintained his innocence, maintained he was joking when he wasn't. Right.
Yeah.
In the mid-2020s, Sophie's case remains officially unsolved in Ireland, a cold case that they do periodically re-examine, partly spurred by renewed publicity from documentaries and the French verdict. They launched a full cold case review of Sophie's case in 2020. A special serious crime review team started retesting evidence with new forensic techniques and methods that were not available in the 90s. In 2023 and 2024, they enlisted cutting edge DNA technologies such as the MVAC wet vacuum, which is a way of collecting DNA evidence where they put it in this chamber. If you have a hard, solid surface, it's perfect for DNA collection. If you have a porous surface like clothes or a car, like the seats in the car that are very bumpy, porous, whatever, the MVAC is the perfect way to get DNA from there if there is any. But it's a really cool
That's
method.
pretty cool.
It is a lot more expensive. They don't try to use it unless they can't get DNA in any other way. Ireland used that MVAC DNA collection. They were trying to lift any kind of DNA from Sophie's clothing and the original murder weapons. So they had both the rock and the concrete block. They're hoping that there's trace DNA evidence like skin cells or sweat from the killer that there's no way they could have found back then.
Yeah.
They're comparing any findings to DNA samples from about 10 individuals who were persons of interest in the original investigation. Of course, Ian's DNA is among the profiles that they're comparing it to. After so many years, finding viable DNA is kind of a long shot, but forensic science, it's advancing.
Yeah.
They're really going to try to see if they can get something before it's been too much longer, but while our technology is better. One development in January 2024, Ian Bailey himself died at age 66 of a heart attack. He collapsed outside his home in Bantry, West Cork, which if he didn't do it and he lived that long under suspicion, that's horrible.
Yeah.
If he did do it, even if you get the DNA evidence that points to him, you can't try him now. His death was met with mixed reactions. Those convinced of his guilt felt a sense of frustration. He had died a free man, never legally held accountable in Ireland. Sophie's family also feels like they won't ever have the truth now that he's gone and they can't have him tried in Ireland. And quote, that they will never have full justice.
I think if they did match anything that they find to his DNA, though, for me at least, that would give me that justice. He's been convicted in France. And now if they have conclusive DNA evidence in Ireland too, to me, that would be like, yeah, it definitely was him.
Agreed.
I would still
want
do it
to
for
know.
me. Yeah.
Yes.
I'd be like, we feel like it was him. The family, they feel like it's him. And this even furthers that, even though he's not alive anymore, if they find his DNA in her stuff.
Ireland, when he passed, was actively working on testing that and looking at the case. Within days of his passing, they were able to get a warrant and they searched his home. They seized notebooks, laptops, personal items. They were hoping to create a full DNA profile of Bailey using anything in his home that he had touched or used. They were basically showing that they want to be absolutely sure that they have a full DNA profile on him to compare against anything they're able to find.
Yeah.
In August 2025, so not that long ago, an Irish news report revealed that the cold case team is awaiting results from advanced DNA tests performed on Sophie's clothing and the murder weapons. If usable DNA is obtained, they'll see if they can find a match to someone.
Interesting.
It could be any day now that it comes back.
Did they find his journals that it's written like, I did this today with a JK next to it?
You know, I didn't read that, but sounds very possible.
There's like little JKs all over his journal. I'm kidding. I don't know.
Seriously.
It's so weird to me to still say that to people.
But it would be interesting to also find out what they found searching
Yeah.
his stuff. Unfortunately, Sophie's father passed away about a year ago in late 2024 at the age of 98. Never really felt like he had justice for his daughter. He once wrote an open letter addressed to Sophie's killer saying, "Your whole life has been one of cowardness." And it's really heartbreaking that he never saw like full, conclusive evidence or, you know, Sophie's mother is now in her 90s. She's still hoping that she'll see
something.
Yeah. It's now been 29 years since Sophie's brutal murder. Her home now stands still. It's owned by her son, who maintains it in her memory. Family members make visits there, find comfort in the place that Sophie loved. Sophie's brother said, quote, "She had a desk by a window where she could see the light from the Fastnet lighthouse. It's always difficult for the first couple of hours after we arrive, but after that, the house is where we find Sophie," which is really sweet. I'm glad that they have a place that brings her to them.
Yeah.
Oh, for now, we strive to tell Sophie's story and keep the focus on Sophie, the woman at the center of it all. She was a person full of dreams, love, intellect, and her life was cut brutally short. Her memory lives on in her family's hearts and in the continued pursuit of justice. And we'll be watching and hoping because Sophie deserves justice. I really hope they get usable DNA off of those items and can match it to someone. Because the
How
truth
long is your Google alert?
It's really, really
your
long.
list. Yeah.
Right.
We gotta watch for this one.
We need to do a case update from this last year because there are some updates. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we can have an episode dedicated to updates on cases if we have enough.
I think so. We'll be watching and hopefully Sophie gets justice.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, thank you so much for listening to our episode today. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want to learn more about Sophie's case or see the resources that we used to create this episode, you can go to our blog, which is on our website, crimeclueless.com. If you appreciate what we do here, a simple, free, easy way to support the show is to give us a rating or a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We would be so grateful. You can scroll down on Apple to the stars and just click it to give us a rating. Or if you truly love us, give us a review. And at the top on Spotify, you can click the 3 dots to leave us a rating there. If you don't follow us on YouTube, we'd be so grateful if you would subscribe to our channel or at Crime Clueless on all social media. Thank you so much. If you found this case interesting, you can find Crime Clueless on all streaming platforms. So share it with your Android or iPhone friends, vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Find it anywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. And as always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murders.
Bye.
Bye.